Hey there, everybody. My name is Jason Gold, and I'm back with another episode of Investor Insights. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about some best practices for earnings season. Now that earnings season is upon us, I thought I'd share with you some insights to make planning a little bit easier and more effective with the investment community. So let's get started. This is actually a topic that I could talk for hours about. There are so many things that companies do right and other things that they've done wrong. Realize that I've seen this from just about every angle. I spent 20 years as an investor, so I've seen the joys and the frustrations of teams that get this right and teams that get this wrong. I also spent several years running investor relations for a big software company, so I've seen how the machine works on the inside. And now I spend time counseling companies as their IR advisor on how to make this situation as seamless as possible and as effective for the investment community as possibly can be. Let's dig into it in a little bit more detail. Here are 8 suggestions for how to make your earnings preparation process as effective as possible. Number 1, in the 2 weeks prior to going into quiet period, I suggest you reach out to everyone on the sell side that covers your company. You don't have to give them any incremental updates, but the sell side appreciates, number 1, the two-way communication that you can have with them, but also number 2, anything that happened during the quarter. Maybe you were on the road with another bank. Maybe you went to a different sell-side conference. Maybe investors were just asking you certain questions about certain things. Being proactive in talking to the sell side about what happened during the quarter, where you were, what you were saying, what investors were asking about is very valuable information to them. And even if it doesn't mean that they publish a note on you, which is not really what you're looking for, it at least keeps that dialogue going and it helps them prepare themselves internally for your upcoming quarterly report. Number 2, also about 2 weeks before you go into quiet period, I think a good practice is to send an email to all the new investors that you met and spoke to during the quarter, reminding them when you're going into quiet period and when your earnings is. See, one of the things that I used to do when I was an investor is I would go to sell-side conferences, I'd meet a bunch of companies, I'd make a list of companies that seemed really interesting to me, and by the time I got around to doing the work on some of them and I had some follow-up questions, I often found myself in their quiet period. And then I was frustrated because I'd missed a window to capture some information before they reported their earnings. By proactively reaching out to investors and telling them when your quiet period begins, you will avoid that frustration for them. What do I mean when I say get a sense for the shape of the quarter? It means number 1, looking at the quarter that you're going to report, and 2, putting that in the context of the guidance you're going to be giving. Is it a beat and raise? Is it a miss and lower? Is it something funky that requires a lot of explanation? See, once you get a sense for the shape of the quarter, you can get a sense for the tone that you'll need to use and the rhetoric that you'll use in the call. Will you be very humble? Will you be quietly boastful? Or will you need to be explaining things? I find it really helps to get a sense of that early on because it helps me think through how I want to construct the script for the quarter. Number 4, create a matrix that shows a variance between where consensus and guidance was and what the reported numbers were, and go line by line through the income statement, the balance sheet, and the cash flow. That will help you understand what the street's going to be focused on. See, they're going to do that too. The minute the results come across the wire, they're building that variance, and that's how they start asking questions. Maybe they're big strategic questions. Why did you beat by so much? Or why was margin such a huge miss? Or maybe they're smaller. Why was R&D much heavier than expected? Or why was sales and marketing much lower? Why is cash flow much better? These are the kinds of things that when you put them side by side in a variance analysis, you'll see them right away. And weave this into your script if necessary. If there are things that need to be explained, don't wait for Q&A. We've talked about that before. Proactively discuss them in your script. And the only way you're going to know what those are is if you build this variance analysis. Number 5, start building your Q&A right away when you're fresh. What I've found is that the longer you sit with the script and marinate with it, the less objective you become. And since everyone who's going to be listening to you talk when you report earnings will be listening to it the first time, they will all be fresh. So you are most like them the first time you go through the numbers, and that will give you the sense of being just like the street. Come up with your Q&A then. Number 6, as you are building the script, start with an outline. Don't start with pros. I find it is much easier to move things around or get people on board with you if you start from an outline. Also, when you start with an outline, you can work backwards from what you want people to say the next day. If you start with pros, you start to lose what the essence of the script really is. Number 7, make sure you arrange your post-earnings calls with your investors. I like to reach out to the top 20 investors, and I think at that time, management should also be on every one of those calls. You can split them up, CEO and CFO, if it's too much for everybody to be on all of them, but I think it's a little bit of a respect thing to have your senior management on the callbacks with your biggest investors. And finally, number 8, make sure you pre-arrange your post-call callbacks with the sell side. Spend a lot of time creating an outline of what you want to talk about. Use that time to make sure everybody's numbers are in order and in line with what you're telling people to model for consensus. This is your time to really begin to control the message to the street. Don't overlook it and don't skimp on your preparation for it. It's not an afterthought. It's just as important as the earnings call. I've been doing this a long time. These are just 8 key insights. There's many, many more, and perhaps I'll do another set of videos on another 8 topics that we should talk about in preparation for earnings. But this is enough to get you started preparing for upcoming earnings. Good luck. And again, my name is Jason Gold. Thanks for tuning in here. I look forward to seeing you back here for another episode of Investor Insights soon.